Hi everyone, welcome to the booster session. I'm Jingjing. I'm the STEM librarian at the UNB Library. Today I'm going to talk about GIS and the related resource and service we provide you in the library. So here's the plan for today's presentation. We'll start with what GIS is. Just in case some of you are not familiar with this concept, I will give a quick intro and then I will illustrate how you can use GIS and how it can be valuable to your research. At the end, I will broadcast some of our surveys and resources in the library if you want to pursue this further for your project. So first, what is GIS? GIS stands for Geographic Information System. And on the side note, GPS stands for Global Positioning System. It is type of GIS data. So GIS is actually a system that captures, stores, analyzes, and manages data related to geographic location or features. So it allow us to analyze and visualize spatial data. It has three main components: data, software, and hardware. Data, of course, is the information that we use for analysis. Software is a tool that will run the data, so it understands the input and generate output. In the library, we have two softwares, QGIS and ArcGIS, which we'll talk about later. Hardware usually means the computer that runs the software. So this component work together to communicate knowledge about the feature on the surface of Earth, including but not limited to natural resource, environmental condition, cultural and demographic characteristic. So how GIS is relevant to your research? GIS can add a lot of value to your research as long as the location matters. So first, it is a powerful tool for interactive visualization. This is important for many areas of research, as I just said, as long as the location matters in your study. So with the help of the visualization, it allows you to see the patterns, trend, relationship that are not visible without the visual aid. So in other words, GIS turn your data into a spatial story. In addition to that, for many of you study geology or environmental science, the GIS software can help you create accurate and detailed maps, which is absolutely useful for illustrating complex spatial feature or relationship or presenting the data to a wider range of audience, because the map probably more accessible to people. You can also integrate different features of spatial data into one single visualization, so you can see the relationship between each feature. This is one example I really like. I'm pretty sure some of you know. So this is an example by epidemiologist John Snow from London in the 1800s. In this example, there was an outbreak, a cholera outbreak. Back then, it was thought as an airborne disease. But what John Snow did was mapping all the cholera cases onto the map of London. So this is a recreation of what John Snow did. The red patches represent the cholera case, and then you can see the green dot. Those are the water pumps. So from this visualization, it's very easy to see all the red patches, which are the cholera cases, or surrounded the water supply. So because of this, the help of visualization, people realize it is not in the air, but it's something in the water that is associated with the disease. So this example really emphasizes the importance of spatial visualization and showcases ability to display patterns we cannot discover without the help. So the usage of GIS is multidisciplinary, and it unlocks the potential for spatial analysis and visualization for many subjects. Don't think it's a tool only for geology or environmental science study. As I mentioned, GIS is a powerful tool for any subject as long as the location matters in your research. And as more GIS software is being developed, its applications start to cover more subject areas in, for example, arts and humanity. So I will give you a few examples. First is how GIS can be used in business and marketing. It is an essential tool in this area. For example, it facilitates decision making by integrating the spatial information and spatial data, and also it can help select the prime location for a new facility, understand the market need and demand. Some logistic companies rely on GIS for the route optimization, the fleet management, so they can improve their proficiency. So let's imagine there's a company who want to invest a lot of money on building a condo across Canada. They want to narrow down a few provinces. What they need to know first is where's the demand, which means where are the population are growing. So this is a map they're looking for. I got this map from Statistics Canada. So it represents the change in the population size in the past few years. So the yellow patches are showing in this area the population are decreasing. The purple ones showing, on the other hand, the increasing population. So by looking at this map, the company at least to know which area they should avoid to build a condo, because if the population are decreasing, that means there's like less demand in the residential living area. And the usage of GIS in public health, we just saw an older example, and it plays a pivotal role in public health and epidemiological study. For example, it was used to disease mapping to identify high-risk area. So the authority, well, in theory, can use this information to allocate resource or prevent effective intervention. So I'm pretty sure you've seen this map quite a few times in the past few years. It's a cumulative case map for COVID from a World Health Organization. Usually in a density map like this, the darker the area represent more severe cases. So from this map, it's very easy to see which area of the world are more affected by COVID. GIS can also use in social science study. It opens up an avenue for study spatial pattern of certain social phenomena, such as crime. It is handy when it comes to understanding the spatial dimension of some social feature. For example, this is a density map, also from Statistics Canada. It shows the number of homicides across Canada. So I showed you a few density maps, but don't think like GIS software can only do this. It can do many different type of maps, because I'm not the software specialist. I didn't do this all by myself. So these are the maps that I can get with the correct copyright. If you're interested, I encourage you to explore what the software can do. So last example I want to give you, as I said previously, the GIS software companies such as Esri developed a lot of more software that can help researchers to incorporate spatial data into art and humanities studies, such as in the field of history or archaeology. For example, this is a software called Story Maps, which you will have access through the UNB Library. It allows historians or researchers to map and analyze the distribution of historical event or battle or trade. With this software, you can create animated maps that illustrate the changes in geographical feature or historical event over time. And we previously had a graduate booster session where this lady really explained this software and the function, the use of the software into great detail. If you can watch this video if you're interested. I want to emphasize one thing, that the story map is not only for art and humanity, not only for history and archaeology. It can be applied to different subjects. I'm just using this as an example. So now you have learned that GIS is powerful and valuable, and you probably want to incorporate this in your research, but have no idea where to start. So library will be the first place you go to find the help. In the library, we provide different form of help to connect you with the GIS. So first, I want to introduce you the guide that the GIS librarian created for you. To get there, we start with the library homepage, click the data, and then click map and GIS. So this is the guide the GIS librarian created for you. It has a lot of information. Remember, I talked about 3 components of GIS, so which are data, software, and hardware. So for the rest of time, I will focus on the resource and the service on GIS data and software in the library. So there are a wide range of data set in the software package, as well as some training support resource that help you get started with GIS analysis. I encourage you to get on the website, take a closer look. I'm pretty sure it's pretty helpful. So let's start with map. Map is a very important component of GIS data. The librarian has been meticulously curated a comprehensive collection of maps. Here at the library, we have the printed collection, which include, but not limited to, New Brunswick street historical maps. We have some special collections, such as World War II topos. Next, we also have the online resource. Covers semantic and graphic data for New Brunswick and Canada. On the same page of the library website, there are also licensed and free available spatial data set that you can use in your study. The GIS librarian can help you to get access to the data, perhaps can also help you clear the copyright, give you some ideas about how to do the data cleaning and the proper citation. So there are a lot in the collection. I encourage you to get on the website and take a closer look. So last section, I want to talk about the GIS software. At the UNB, we provide 2 software, the QGIS and ArcGIS. I encourage you to get yourself familiar with both, or at least one, if you want to pursue a career or further study in an area that might require this skill, because both software are a powerful and popular tool in industrial and academia sectors. We have them both installed in the library in room 419. That's a GIS lab. Be aware that both software are PC friendly. So this is a screenshot of the QGIS homepage. It is open source software. The biggest open source GIS software that are freely available. It is also a major competitor for ArcGIS. Because it's free, so you probably need to add more extension for different functions that you want to use further in your analysis. And there's a steep learning curve for beginners. And I would say so that is true also for ArcGIS. ArcGIS is a very powerful tool and it's very, very expensive. Since you're a student at UNB, you have it for free. So I do recommend you to take advantage of this and get yourself familiar with these useful tools. We have online training course and resources you can get for free, and some of which will usually cost you. So the link to QGIS and ArcGIS, all the training courses are on the same page. I show the screenshot here, so it helps you to find it. I also encourage you to reach out to the GIS librarian if you want to explore some ideas. So here is your GIS help in the library. As I said, the librarian is Harriet. You also have 2 different help, which is David Fraser from the geomatic engineer and Jay from forestry. If you're outside those 2 departments, your best contact will be Siobhan, the GIS librarian. I hope this presentation is informative in terms of the GIS resource and the service. Thank you very much.
Hey, my name is Mike Nason. I am the Open Scholarship and Publishing Librarian at UNB. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about ORCID. I decided to talk about ORCID from an attribution perspective. Sometimes they're referred to as scholarly profiles, and I do give talks on scholarly profiles, but in this case I want to talk a little bit about why you might be invested in doing this from the point of not really having a lot of publications necessarily. So, forgive me a little bit for being presumptive, but I feel like there's a general expectation, assuming you're entering a career as an academic, that you will eventually be sharing the products of your work. I think that's a safe assumption. You may want your work to be known and discoverable and accessible to the folks who might benefit from it, I would think or hope that that is the intent. And you'd probably like it to be attributed to you since you did the work, and also since the implications of its value will have some impact on your career. Knowing that you did a work is a big part of being able to talk about the work you did. I suspect this may seem weird in some cases, depending on where you are in your graduate school journey, because maybe you are not used to doing this. For most students, the experience of dissemination is just handing in a paper to the one person who grades them, and you have shared your research. That is all you really do. And it's fine if that's the case. That's really normal, right? And also, fun fact, plenty of established researchers don't really think about where and how they share their work either. It's just sort of a thing that happens to them in some ways. So when you submit a paper for a class, this is what happens. You read the thing, you get an idea, you write your assignment, and you move on with your life. This is most of school, more or less. And nobody really talks about what happens in a situation where you're going to start disseminating or sharing that work more broadly. Of course, what is actually happening is this sort of enormous Rube Goldberg machine of scholarly publishing infrastructure, stuff like research data, preprints, articles, presentations, proceedings. All of these different outputs can come at varying parts of this life cycle, right? You've got ideation, so where you're getting your ideas and reading materials and figuring out what you want to write about. You've got data collection and analysis, so when you're like figuring out all your data and recording information, doing surveys, accumulating all of those things. You've got publication, which may be sharing a preprint or sharing an accepted manuscript or other pieces, and people share iterative versions of an article all through the publishing process. And then you get the mobilization of actually like exchanging the knowledge, communicating that knowledge, and getting that information back and forth. And then people read those things, and on you go. So obviously there's a lot more happening than just handing in a paper and moving on with your life. Your work is going to end up in a lot of places, often without you even really being aware of it. A lot of the time when I'm talking to researchers about a service or platform or practice they should care about, like ORCID, they look at me with a very recognizable facial expression and says, I don't have this problem, and I don't know why you're telling me solutions for a problem I don't have. People think that this stuff sort of naturally is findable and that they don't have a problem with attribution, that their work is easy to locate. But unless your name is wildly unique, I'm here to tell you that accurate, reliable attribution can definitely be a problem. Take, for example, there are whole disciplines that don't really use the first name field in citations. They just use a first initial. So if you have the same first initial as another author and the same last name, and that's pretty easy in global publishing, all of a sudden you have another person who's publishing with the same name as you, and your citations or your publications can get conflated when people are pulling that data. Again, even this required a student ID number, right? We didn't just do this with names, we used student IDs. So all researchers need to talk about the work they've done often, repeatedly. You're going to have to, through a career as an academic, list your publications a bajillion times in a bajillion places. Every year you hand in information to your institution to talk about the work you've done. When you're filing for grants, you have to list all of your publications. You have to do this stuff all the time. You would like to think that it's just all kept in a place, and really it kind of isn't. All researchers benefit from clear, unambiguous attribution. And unambiguous attribution is what ORCID is all about. So take, for example, I might write my own name in any of these ways. Mike Nason, Michael Nason, Michael Thomas William Nason, or maybe Mike Tom Bill Nason, Michael T Nason. Often I usually only have one middle name field if it does exist at all. M Nason, Ahem Nason, if we're doing like handles or any of those things. And there may be more than one of any of these. There are more variations, and folks with the same name, it's harder to find the stuff that they've done. So I get, for example, I'm sure everybody has like an email doppelganger where you get emails intended for another person who has the same name as you. There's a lady in Texas who just bought a Ram truck. Congratulations. I guess her husband's name is maybe Mike. I don't know what's going on, but I'm getting emails about buying Ram trucks. I may even have to format my name in a specific way because of a journal citation style or because the way their submission form lets me insert metadata. This is a journal submission platform's metadata for names. It's given name, family name, and preferred public name, and that's it. So for a lot of Anglophone people, particularly people who come from sort of Western communities, first name, last name, or given name, family name, pretty straightforward. However, if my name was Alejandro Casas Niño de Rivera, what are we doing here? Like this doesn't necessarily make sense and map to my name in a way that makes sense. So now I have to think about my identity and how it's represented in publications moving forward, and which of my names I want to put in what place in order to properly be cited. So instead of doing these, if you use an ORCID ID for your publication metadata and for your author metadata, you just get this string. And that string is unique for you. It is your string. It's a little bit like a barcode. And it will take you, if I click that link, to all of my works, no matter what my name metadata was on the publication, if I changed my name when I moved to a place, if I got married, if I transitioned, any of these things. None of that stuff matters anymore because name metadata is actually really bad for figuring out who did a work. And the other thing people use a lot is like affiliation, like at this university or in this department. But if you move institutions, that's no longer useful either. So this goes with you for your whole career. And you don't need to worry about what your name metadata was. Again, it's a little bit like a barcode. And barcodes are kind of creepy, and I understand that. But barcodes are also incredibly convenient because when you go to the store and you buy a thing, scanning the barcode means the person doesn't have to do a search on a screen and type in what you're buying every time you buy a thing. So it's good. This is a slide from ORCID that talks a little bit about all of the stuff that happens to your work. So I'm going to go over these really quick. Number one, it is uniquely yours. You distinguish yourself and claim credit for your work while controlling access to your data, no matter how many people have your name or similar. So when you create an ORCID account, you have control over who has access to all of the things on it. You can restrict it to specific institutions if you want, who may have access to your ORCID, or you completely remove those things or have them wide open. Name flexibility means that you reduce the negative consequences of name changes, so you will no longer be limited to the name you used when you began your career. More time for research. So really, this is kind of the big one, is the time savings. And I'll show you in a second what the profile itself looks like. But if all of your publications are in ORCID, and you apply for a grant, and they accept ORCID as the submission method for hosting your publications, you send them a link instead of filling out an enormous volume of data in whatever format they're looking for. And that's going to save you time. You control your visibility and discovery. So one of the nice things about this is all of your publications are linked on your ORCID profile, but also when you publish somewhere, your ORCID will be part of the metadata related to that publication. So if you look at basically any article in a major publisher, the next time you're looking at an article online, if you see the little ORCID ID, if you click it, it'll take you to their profile. And you can see the other work those people have done. That is hugely useful. And it helps make sure that people can see the other works that you've done in that space. Instead of, you put the person's name in a search engine and try to find the other stuff they've done. Instead, now I can see all the other stuff they've done. Reduced administrative burden. So the other part, because that ORCID is included in the publication metadata, DOI registration agencies, when you publish, can automatically push those records to your ORCID profile. So you no longer even need to manually add things to ORCID. That happens automatically when you publish because you use that ORCID when you publish to identify yourself, and they just push it. They go, well, that's a work by this person. We know that person. And up goes their metadata, which is really, really handy. Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's portable. If you leave the institution you're at, just change the email address it's affiliated with and off you go. You don't need to worry about any of those things. If the institution decides that they want to pull information from your ORCID record, if they have some sort of integration or a research system to pull metadata from your record, you can let them, and you can also shut that hose off. That's totally your decision. You decide the comings and goings of your work, and it is your profile. Your ORCID's free. It isn't tied to an institution, it's tied to you. It can be tied to other services so that it automatically populates as you publish. You decide what's visible and what isn't. You can allow or withdraw connection permissions whenever you want. It will sooner or later save you significant time. So I'm just going to go real quick to my ORCID record. Oh no, we're signed out. They're based in the UK. Yeah, I know it's not me, it's Mark. Because Mark was in my slide deck because we were going to go through adding stuff to Mark's record. But this still services a good opportunity to show you what an ORCID record looks like. So it includes all the things you would typically have in a CV, right? You've got, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller maybe. Yeah. So you've got your employment record. Congratulations, Mark, you've held down a job since 1999. Good work. Below that, you've got works. So Mark has decided to share here 5 individual works. But he could also include, if he wanted, there's a service component. So if he spent time on specific committees or did other work of that kind, those would also show up here if he wanted. And you can also include your funding and funder IDs. And then you can, in the long run, connect a funder ID to all of the research that came out of that funding. So you can start to tie the room together a little bit in terms of where the money goes and what the products of that funding were. You can add whatever you want. Under employment, you can add anything. You can add whatever you want. Yeah, it's very flexible. Each of these sections you can add manually. But another thing you can do is there's a connector under articles. And if I were signed in, but we ran into this, we timed out on our login. And it would take way too long to log back in with passwords generated. But when you add new publications, there's a little chooser thing that'll basically say you can check Crossref or you can check DataCite, which are the 2 places that are like major DOI registration sites. And you can search their APIs for your content and pull your stuff in automatically from there. Or you can manually add records, or you can check OpenAir for records, which is what I recommend. If you put stuff in repositories, it will probably be in OpenAir in one way or another, and you can check there to pull content. There's a bunch of ways to search and add content automatically. So the offer for people is if they publish anything or they want help setting this up, they can contact me, mnason@unb.ca, and it'll be included in the contents, but it's really, really simple and straightforward. You can add whatever you want to this stuff. You can decide who does or does not see it. Any of this information is available. So Mark actually has publications that are hidden from view here, I think. So Mark has listed a handful more publications that are actually on his public site. This is his public ORCID record. So anybody could view this. If Mark published an article and they clicked on his name, this is the record that they would see. Well, maybe. If it's in ResearchGate. You could hide whatever you want. Yeah, any individual piece. So if Mark had 4 or 5 of their names here and he wanted those listed in his ORCID record, they could be so only he sees them or only his employer sees them if there's a connection between him and the employer, or they're public. You can decide on any of these what you want to be accessible. This existing doesn't mean you can read everything on it. This doesn't have a requirement for open access. This is usable for all researchers, but it will tell you where the work is. If there's a DOI, you can go to that record. Whether or not you can read that record depends on that author's interest in publishing open access and whether or not that publisher is accommodating an open access version of that work, like any other thing. Yeah, it's just less toxic and stupid. Yes, it's kind of like LinkedIn. The difference is that all of those other like ResearchGate, you mentioned, LinkedIn, all of those are for-profit companies, right? Those are all for-profit enterprises. The objective here is to sell data. ResearchGate sells your data. So when you put your stuff up in ResearchGate, whatever PDFs you're putting up, and all of those other things, ResearchGate's selling the information about how you interact with your colleagues and with data back to publishers. They have agreements with major, like Elsevier is buying data from ResearchGate. So this has none of that. This is just a, not-for-profit, open source platform from people who just want you to be able to list your publications and know who you are. This is a persistent identifier. This isn't a feature-rich communication platform tool. You're not going to get DMs. Nobody's sending you a job offer message through ORCID. This is not, there's no social features built in the way that there are in LinkedIn. There's no engagement mechanisms or gamification. None of that stuff is here. It is much more boring, but in a way it is also much more wholesome and functional and a lot less gross than those other platforms. And ORCID's an international standard, right? Like if I was applying for funding in the UK, I'm required to have an ORCID account. This isn't happening in Canada yet. So a lot of Canadians look at me like, oh, what? That's crazy. But it's very normal in the rest of the world to need this. And A lot of people do not really understand that, but if they work with an international team or they have co-authors who are from other countries, they're going to have to eventually figure this out. So yeah, ORCID's a big deal. So yeah, recommend people use ORCID. I've gone a little bit over time, I apologize. But that's it. ORCID.